If somebody asked you the question, where are the world's best hi-fi speakers manufactured? I wonder if you would say in Sweden. I bet some of you would. And this is a question that I've been asking myself since the Munich high-end show back in May of this year. When I went into the Marten room, listened to their brand new speakers, I asked questions about those speakers, and the answers to those questions sealed my fate. I knew I needed to find out more. I needed to come out here and see them being manufactured to learn more about them and about Marten as a speaker manufacturer. I've done all of that. It's been an amazing couple of days. I've got it all on camera for you. And at the end of the video, I suppose I have to ask the question again. Are the world's best hi-fi speakers manufactured in Sweden? This is going to be a fascinating, interesting one. If you enjoy the video, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more. Here we go. So I'm here with Marten Dunhoff. And Marten, firstly, thank you for allowing me to come out here to Sweden, to your head office and to your factory to see how things are made and get to listen to these amazing speakers. But the reason why I'm here is because back in May, back at the Munich high-end show, I got to see and listen to briefly the brand new Coltrane Quintet speakers. And when I asked you about them, I was fascinated by their design. But we didn't have enough time then to get into it. So, really want to learn more about it, why I'm here. But I feel like there could be a lot of people that are very new to the high-end or ultra-high-end part of the hi-fi market, and they might have questions, why and how. So can you tell us about Marten's ultra-high-end? What makes their speakers that exact term, ultra-high-end?
Of course, I would love to do that. First of all, it has been great to have you here, so thank you very much for coming. Some really nice days. We've been able to visit our factory, as you said, see a little bit more about the production, and that is the best way of explaining what is a Marten product in that way. Because everything starts with a blank paper, an idea from Leif Olofsson, our founder and chief designer of all our products today, and his ability to work together with our in-house CAD designer and in the end actually have something that will be a unique Marten product. To begin with, I would like to highlight that this is absolutely a family-owned company. It was founded by Leif Olofsson and his two brothers, Jörgen and Lars. And of course, we have not always been focusing on producing these high-end speakers. They started with just their bare hands and have been growing organically during these 26 years. So a family-owned company, we are focusing on producing all of our products here in Sweden and using sub-suppliers that are very close to us. It's a small volume. We focus mainly on high quality and not volume in that way.
I can't help but take my eye off, out the corner of my eye, the carbon fiber aspect of the Coltrane Quintet. So why make a speaker out of carbon fiber?
To begin with, it is a unique material. It gives us the ability to create a form that is, of course, beautiful for the eye, but also has the perfect properties for making a speaker cabinet. With that form follows function and no standing waves. It is also a very light material. And when you look at just the cabinet, in this case for one piece of the Coltrane Quintet, the weight is around 15 kilos. And when the speakers are built with all the drivers, the massive front, the solid steel stands and all of that, together with crossover filters and internal dampening, we are talking about 115 kilos. So for us, we need something that is light from the beginning, but it's of course not only with the lightness of the material, it's also very, very stiff. Gives us a resonance-free cabinet. We are even using what we call a monocoque construction here, so it's 2 layers of carbon fiber with this honeycomb pattern in between.
And speaking off camera, I asked you, again, why build them out of carbon fiber and not aluminium? And you told me it allows us to create unique forms. And that's something, again, I think you take for granted. But when you spend a little bit more time, just a little bit more time looking at the speakers from different angles, you appreciate how curved the back is, how curved the sides are, how curved the bottom is. And of course, I understand that would be very difficult, maybe even impossible.
Of course.
With other materials.
And it's not only a design aspect, it's also form follows function. It gives us better properties for the cabinet to work as a cabinet.
One of the things that always stood out to me about Marten speakers, and it's something that I took for granted until today, is the use of wood and the wood aspect, the lovely wood tops, some of the wood fronts, and some of the speakers like the big boys that are behind us. But after meeting the carpenters today, seeing the amount of effort that goes into not just selecting the right woods for the job, again, another level of appreciation for the quality of the product. But of course, Marten could use alternative materials. So why use these types of woods for your speakers?
To begin with is of course a design feature of making a product look even better. And even here, the combination of the wood together with carbon fiber in some of the products is also a form follows function thing, because it gives the properties of making a stiffer cabinet, which this kind of sandwich construction. You can see on the new Coltrane Quintet we are also using an aluminum plate between the wood front and the carbon fiber cabinet to make it even more stiffer. It is something that shows that the product has been really thought of. It goes in a lot of production hours, it goes in a lot of craftsmanship, a lot of knowledge to be able to make these wood fronts and tops in that way. It is a product that needs to stand out, so for that reason we use this.
It was great to see and speak to the Marten carpenters to get a better understanding of their processes and craftsmanship. They told me the wood is delivered to them in huge raw plank form, and it has to dry for at least 2 months before they can even start to sort it, as the wood can move a lot in that time. Then a careful selection process begins, as there are specific size requirements needed for the different size of Marten speakers. And not all of the wood will meet the standards, and therefore it can't all be used for the speakers. As all wood is visually different due to its natural grain structure, the carpenters have to select the pieces that they think will look best once bonded together, so that you do not see the individual pieces, you just see one overall beautiful piece of wood, when in fact the wood's visual appearance has been hand-picked and chosen. It's a real skill. Once sorted, it's cut down into rectangle type pieces, intended to be bonded together to form a very strong shape that will not move, but can still breathe. When you see the bonded together wood pieces in a more raw form, then with the speaker's shape overlay of a front baffle on top, you start to realise just how much work is needed to create the very custom Marten speaker form factors. I got to see several top and bottom wood sections that were nearing completion, and also someone hand sanding them, and I was told it's millimeters in terms of the tolerances that they are working to here, and to do that by hand really requires a lot of skill. For finishing, it's a multi-coat lacquer process that is all done by hand, and it can take days for each piece to be finished to the high standards that Marten require. I think when you look at the finished products, you can see why Marten do this, as it's very nice and very unique for their speakers. And I think it's the high skill level that they have in doing this is why it's so easy to take this whole process for granted. Another thing that stands out to me about Marten speakers is the use of different materials. We spoke about carbon fiber and we spoke about wood, but there's also diamond, there's beryllium, and there's aluminium, and more carbon fiber. So why do Marten do that?
When we come to the drivers that we're using, so in a Coltrane Quintet, there is a diamond dome tweeter there is a Beryllium upper mid-range, there is a carbon fiber lower mid-range, and aluminum bass drivers. The reason why we use different materials for different drivers is actually quite clever, because all of the experience that Leif gathered during these 26 years of designing and producing speakers, together with our very, very good sub-suppliers of drivers, he realized that different materials, of course, have different properties. And the absolute best material for creating a tweeter is diamond. It is, of course, a very expensive, exotic material, so it's harder to use for that reason. But when reproducing the higher frequencies, there is no better material for that, according to us. In the same way, when going to the upper mid-range, Beryllium shows extraordinary properties for this. And also here you're able to produce quite a big driver, a 3-inch driver that only weighs 1.8 grams, working perfectly together in harmony with the diamond tweeter. The development project of the Coltrane Quintet then also put us in a different situation, because we were using new 10-inch drivers, aluminum sandwich construction. And working together with our sub-suppliers, we realized that we needed something new, and we were able to develop this carbon fiber lower mid-range driver that then works perfectly. So it's all about, the right material for the right frequencies of sound, and that makes it even easier than to produce the crossover filters for it.
Martin, it's been fascinating talking to you here, but we've already shot a piece of video in the factory where you show us the products much more up close, which is really, really, really interesting. So I think we should go to that part now.
A warm welcome to the Marten factory outside of Gothenburg. We have come here today to show you the full production process of the Marten speakers. In this facility, we produce everything from the Oscar Duo all the way up to the mighty Coltrane Supreme. We have now come deeper into our production area. In the background, I have my colleagues Christian and Rune, who are building a pair of Mingus Septet Statement Edition. And we wanted to take the opportunity to show you more of the different parts that goes into a speaker of this caliber. To begin with, we of course have a cabinet. We have this cabinet here, which is a material we call M-board. It is beautifully finished in this high gloss piano color. All the polishing of the cabinets we do in-house to make sure that they are completely free of hairline scratches and things like that. To make the cabinet even stiffer, stronger, free of resonances, we use a sandwich construction. So on the top and the bottom, we mount this aluminum plate. And the next step is then, of course, this solid wood piece. It's called Sobrano. Very, very hard, beautiful woodwork. This is actually also produced here in Sweden. We have the very, very famous Marten first order crossover filters that we produce in-house. What you see on the table here is the crossover filter for the tweeter. Then we have the upper mid-range. Then we have the lower mid-range. And then we have the bass. The total production time for building a crossover filter like this, together with the Jorma statement cable, is around 25 hours. The total production time of building a pair of Mingus Septets is around 1 week for one person, with all the different processes. When it comes to the drivers in a Marten speaker, we only use custom drivers. So let's start from the top. Here we have our diamond dome. And of course, we use diamond because it's the absolute best material for controlling high frequencies. This one has a really strong neodymium magnet system. Then we have our Beryllium upper mid-range. What's very special about this driver is that the moving system only weighs 1.8 grams. Next in order, we have a lower mid-range, which is a ceramic driver with a very, very strong neodymium magnet system. And then, of course, we have aluminum bass drivers. In the septets, there are two 8-inch bass drivers. The septet is a closed box, so no bass reflex or anything like that. Instead, on the backside, it has two passive radiators, which is a 10-inch radiator. Same construction, same material as the active drivers. When final assembly of the products are made, it's of course very important that a speaker at this dignitude is packed in a very, very safe way. So when shipping the speakers around the world, we are of course using real high quality flight cases like this.
I'm here with Leif Olofsson, who is Marten company founder, but also chief designer. And Leif, thank you very much for coming on camera with me, because I really want to ask you some in-depth questions about your speakers and choices and the reasons why you design speakers the way they are. But I'd like to talk to you first about crossovers, because we all know that's the heart and soul of a speaker to some degree. And Marten are famous for their crossover designs. And now I've seen some, I can see why. So can you tell us what makes a good crossover and what makes a Marten crossover?
We can start with the Mingus and Coltrane series. There, since 2014, I did this first order crossover. That's quite unique, not 100% unique. Some others do it as well, but not in the same way we are doing it. The first order crossover, if you do it properly, it's the best way to do a loudspeaker. That means that all the frequencies from all the drivers coming at the same time to your ear. If you have a second order, third order, fourth order crossover, you will be time distortion, so to speak, between tweeter, mid-range and bass. It will come with different timing. First order crossover, properly done, it will be no issue, the time smearing. So we start with the first order crossover, and the downside with the first order crossover is that it's very complicated. You need a driver that can handle it properly, so it's getting quite costly. But it's worth it. You can hear it when we listen to Mingus or Coltrane loudspeaker with a very natural live feeling of a soundstage. We do it hardwired instead of circuit boards, and that's a best way to do it, I think. But then you don't get losses in the circuit boards or whatever you can. If you mass produce, it should be it's much easier to have a circuit board. Then you can buy it from a supplier already made, but when you buy thousands of them, or hundreds at least, we're doing maybe 10, 20 pieces at a time. So this is much better way to do it than hardwire, but it's complicated and it takes a long time to do it.
Next question would be about speaker drivers, because we all know that's extremely important. And Marten makes some interesting choices for the materials and differing materials. So how do you go about designing a speaker? How do you go about choosing what speaker drivers you want to include? How do you go about designing speaker drivers to go in your speakers? What's your approach? My
approach for a good driver is I always be working with very stiff materials in the cones or domes. I think that's the way to go. That means that the breakup in the material itself will be no breakup until one point. If you have a really stiff material, like diamond, for instance, that's a perfect stiff material. Then you can put it up very high frequencies, so it doesn't affect the hearable frequencies. So that's a very good point to go from. And the same with all the other drivers, so beryllium, carbon fiber, ceramic, very stiff materials. So you don't get any distortion. The resonance you get, all the drivers, you can handle in a crossover, take away that. If you do that, you have no distortion at all. We talked a little bit earlier about the carbon fiber cabinet. It's the same principle. You don't get any resonances in the carbon fiber cabinet until one point. And if you take care of that resonance, then you have no distortion left.
So Leif, so far we've spoken mostly about what I call like ultra high-end speakers. And of course, only a very small percentage of people are lucky enough to be able to, afford speakers at this kind of level, or even fit them in their homes. We talk about the big speakers behind us. But Marten create a range of speakers. And I've had at home the Oscar and the Parker speakers, which are more affordable, obviously still premium high-end speakers, but obviously more affordable compared to the ones behind us. So I have to ask you the question, if you're designing these ultra high-end speakers with everything that it takes to make them what they are, how is it possible to then make speakers more affordable? What sort of compromises do you make, or do you have to make compromises in design?
I always start to do the ultra high-end loudspeaker, because then I don't have any restrictions. I can do whatever I want, and it will cost as much as it costs, because I have no limits. But doing that, I learn a lot. I can learn a lot of materials and components and cabinet constructions, since I don't have any compromises, so to speak, if you can use that word. But I learn how to do it in a cheaper way as well, without compromises. So I can take the best bits from the ultra high-end loudspeakers, trickle down to the more affordable models without really compromises. Of course, it will not be as good as a loudspeaker that costs several times more, but you still have a signature sound from a Marten loudspeaker in a more affordable model.
Which is interesting, because I had the Parker Trios at home only a couple of months ago, and there was a lot of sonic characteristics that I recognised when listening to the more expensive ones here. So that's truth. And I was looking at the crossovers for the Parker and Oscar in the factory yesterday, and it was like similar, smaller but similar, which is evident of truth of trickle down. What are the differences between those two models?
Parker and Oscar. Oscar is, as you know, it's more affordable than the Parker. Crossover, for instance, is very similar, but a little bit more simpler to keep the cost down. But you still have the same high quality components, so you don't get any loss really. And also, when you go to the passive radiators, that I usually prefer, but it's also a costly way to do it. So have a bass reflex instead. It's, of course, a tube is much more simple to produce than a whole driver. So, and you can get a really good result with bass reflex as well. You don't actually need a passive radiator to do a good loudspeaker. But if you have a possibility, it will be even better.
So that would be your preference, to use a passive radiator. Without going too technical with it, could you explain what the benefits of that would be?
The benefit with a passive radiator is, compared to bass reflex, is that you can control the bass much better. It doesn't matter if you play at low volume or high volume, it will be the same bass response. If you have a bass reflex, it will be different bass response depending on how volume you play, because the airflow through the tube will be different if you play low volume or high volume. So that's a benefit. So it will be more even bass no matter what.
And I want to ask you about diamonds, because you mentioned diamonds before, and everybody knows diamonds are a girl's best friend, but they've become an audiophile's best friend to some degree as well. But there's another manufacturer that's been very famous for using diamond in their speaker drivers. We don't need to name them. Maybe someone would assume that Marten are using the same diamond or the same diamond tweeters in their speakers. So can you tell us maybe what a Marten diamond tweeter looks like, and how is it different maybe from any others out there?
I think the basic material is more or less the same for the dome, but there are not many manufacturers that do the diamond domes. But I know we don't use the same as a big company that you're thinking of, I think. It's not the same manufacturer, but it's not only the material that is important, it's how you implement it into the magnet system as well. I can't tell you how others do, I just tell you how we do. So we do it to make it as lightweight as possible. And that's according to how we do the voice coil former and the winding around for the voice coil. what kind of materials and stuff like that. So make it as lightweight as possible.
Because the reason why I ask that is because when you move up to the Parker, with the Parker range, you have the choice between ceramic and diamond. So if somebody's watching this and they're looking at that range, because that's like a real sweet spot, I think, from performance and price and looks and everything product from Marten, from my experience. So if somebody's watching this and they're trying to decide between ceramic and diamond, what would be your advice to them?
It will be basically the same loudspeaker, but a bit even more clear sound without getting harsh, or actually it sounds a little bit softer in when you're direct comparing, but with high resolution as well. If you don't compare it, just listen to the standard version, you will be perfectly happy, as you've been with the Parker Do, I think, the ceramic version. Yeah. It's perfect, but of course you get a little bit more with the diamond version. So if you have the money for it, so go for it.
I want to ask you about the facilities here, because you've got an amazing factory, the carpentry and all that's absolutely amazing. This building's fantastic. But we are sitting in a very impressive listening room, which of course you use for testing and listening. And there's a secondary room outside, which I'll show some video of. Obviously, this must be integral to your voicing of speakers or your testing of speakers. But how does that work in terms of a speaker designer? I've got this room, and then once my speakers go out into the real world, how do you account for everyone else's room being different?
You would think that you need this kind of room to get the best possible sound for it. That's not 100% true, because if I get a great sound here in my very special room that is sitting in, it will work in all the other rooms as well. Almost as good. Because in this room, I can hear everything. Is something wrong? If you have a resonance in the actual design of a loudspeaker, or something is wrong in the construction, you can hear it here. So if you get it right here in this room, it will work perfectly fine in every other room. Much better, actually.
One other question based on that is listening. So when you're designing a speaker, you must have to go through a whole process of design, testing, measuring, and all those processes. But how much of the process is just sitting down and listening to the speakers?
It's actually quite a lot. I would say that's the most important part, because I start always with, I have an idea of a loudspeaker, how it should be. And then I do a prototype, and I do some measurements, and then I have a software program to simulate the crossover and the frequency response and everything like that. And I do that until it looks as it should. But then you only came halfway. When you start to listen, you can do small adjustments that can audibly be very big. But you don't see it on measurements. It's just, yeah, it's a little bit different, but you can't tell if it's better or not on the measurements. So you need to listen, which is best. And that's very time consuming. It sounds like a cliche, but I want to have a perfectly natural sound. Everyone says that, more or less. But I'm listening to a lot of live music, and we do, in this room, we're doing live recordings. So I get a lot of input from when I hear the live music in the same room that I designed the loudspeakers in. So it helps a lot. Then I can hear how instruments should sound in live performance, and then can I implement it to the design of the loudspeakers. So that helps me a lot.
Leif, it's been absolutely fascinating speaking to you. I could ask you 1,000 more questions, but there's only so much video time we can do. I just want to say thank you so much. I felt it was important to close the video with a little bit of sound explanation about the brand new speakers from Marten, the Coltrane Quintet. And I listened to them for about an hour and a half yesterday, which is really not a lot of time to, assess the speaker at this sort of quality. Of course not, it's not long enough for this to be a review. So I thought I'd just give you a little bit of insight into what I heard. This part of the speaker is absolutely phenomenal. It's so fast, it's so clear, it's so detailed, and you hear, I think, more detail from a speaker like this, more high frequency information and just more transient detail than I've heard from many speakers that I've listened to personally. It's so fast and so clear, but it's not harsh, it's not aggressive, it's just there. The detail's just there, and it's there and immediate. And then for me, it's like the bass needs to keep up with that speed, and it does. It's really fast. Again, really like lively, dynamic, but stop start fast, like ultra stop start fast. And as an overall speaker, it's just massively transparent. And transparent's a word that gets used all the time. What does that mean? Well, it's like the disappearing act. Never once did I feel like I was listening to a speaker. I was just listening to sounds in a very big room. I mean, this listening room is huge. For a room this size, of course, you have the bigger speakers to the left of me there. That's you know, a much bigger speaker for a room this size, but you know, like real world size speakers playing loud, playing dynamic, playing very clear, even in a very big room. So all of those things are extremely impressive. So these are, you know, ultra high end, you know, unfortunately not in my affordability, but for anybody who's lucky enough to be in a position to, you know, afford speakers like this, you know, you should have a listen to them. They're stunning things to look at. I love the carbon fiber. I think that looks beautiful. It's really different. It's really striking. And yeah, it's absolutely lovely. So I've got to end the video there. It's been a fascinating time. I've really enjoyed my time out here in Gothenburg in Sweden. A huge thank you to everybody at Marten who's made my time so, you know, so welcoming and made my time so enjoyable. I hope everybody's enjoyed the video in the same vein. Again, if you enjoyed it, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this.